Well, all right then, ladies and gentlemen. It looks like the first chapter of Andy Ruiz Jr.'s return, his promotional deal, the first chapter of him returning in 2 years. Before that, before his last fight against Gerald Big Baby Miller, another 2-year layoff against Luis Ortiz. And before that, another 1.5-year layoff. And before that, another 1.5-year layoff. For the man who was on top of the world at one time, June 1st, 2019, Andy Ruiz Jr., ladies and gentlemen, knocking out Anthony Joshua, winning the WBA Super, WBO, IBO, and IBF heavyweight titles, knocking him out of the 7th round, dramatic fashion. My goodness, becomes the first Mexican-born heavyweight champion in the sport of boxing. But then, ends up rematching Anthony Joshua. What was it? 5-6 months later. In December of 2019, the man comes back 20 to 30 pounds heavier, went on a binge of celebrating all the money that he's won, the titles that he's won, but started messing around with cocaine, drugs, started eating a lot, wasn't focused. Came into that fight against a focused Anthony Joshua. It lost his titles just like that. His reign was very short. And like I said, the dude ends up taking about 1.5 years off, makes his return against Chris Arreola, and it was not what you expected. I was expecting Andy Ruiz Jr. to go in there against the old Chris Arreola and take him out. But no, Chris Arreola shocked me. In LA, ladies and gentlemen, shocked me. Even dropping Andy Ruiz Jr. Of course, he lost that fight, but it wasn't what I expected from Andy Ruiz. To me, it wasn't the most impressive performance. Then he comes back and fights Luis King Kong Ortiz and drops him multiple times, but still, ultimately, wasn't the exact performance that you would have wanted from Andy Ruiz. Now, don't get me wrong, Luis King Kong Ortiz was a great boxer. It's a great fighter, man. Tough fight. It's a tough fight right there for Andy Ruiz. Then, Andy Ruiz, 2 years later, goes in there against Gerald Big Baby Miller in August of 2024. Is looking absolutely fantastic, but then suffers a hand injury. Starts to get a little tired. Gerald Big Baby Miller takes advantage of that, starts coming forward, putting on pressure, combinations. The dude is humongous, taking all of Andy Ruiz Jr. shots. I honestly thought Gerald Big Baby Miller did enough to win that fight, but it didn't go his way. The fight ended in a draw, ladies and gentlemen. So Andy Ruiz Jr. signs with Matchroom Boxing, what was it, last week? Huge, huge deal. Great for where he's at, 36 years old, very inactive, trying to bounce back. Looks to be in the best shape of his life right now, even though he's 36. Body-wise, looks to be in the best shape, if you've been keeping up with the man. Eddie Hearn, as soon as they struck this deal, you hear Eddie Hearn talking about Andy Ruiz Jr. being able to beat, for sure, the likes of Fabio Worley and Daniel the Ball, and being able to beat the likes of AGIT KABAYEL. He literally said that. And giving Moses Atama a great fight. Now, whether or not you believe that's possible, on September 4th, he's making his return against Damian Knyba, ladies and gentlemen. It has been announced. Damian Knyba, 6'7", Poland. Guy looks like he might be 6'8". With an 86-inch arm reach. Has 18 fights in his career. 17-1, has 1 loss. His last loss, he was undefeated before suffering his last loss against AGIT KABAYEL. In Germany, homecoming fight for AGIT. AGIT, who just got elevated to the full WBC heavyweight champion of the world. Damian Knyba, he took a huge leap, bro. It was a huge leap from the competition that the man had been facing to going in there with a guy like AGIT KABAYEL. And I do believe it's going to be the same exact thing with a guy like Andy Ruiz Jr., although there might be a little bit more openings, a little bit more holes than what you had against AGIT KABAYEL, you might have a little bit more openings, a little bit more holes on a guy like Andy Ruiz Jr., depending on how Andy Ruiz Jr. comes looking into this fight. Because Andy Ruiz Jr. has the experience going into this fight and is just technically more sound. Damian Knyba, he's a tall fighter, long reach. The dude, I believe, has like a 10-inch reach advantage on a guy like Andy Ruiz, who's only standing at 6'2", not the biggest heavyweight. But when you look at the style of Damian Knyba, he uses his reach. He uses his footwork. He's tall. He's throwing 6, 7 jabs out there to try to keep you off of him, to try to keep you from cutting off the distance, because Damian Knyba cannot fight in the pocket. He can't. He's too tall. He's too slow. Head movement too slow. His inside game is horrible. He utilizes his reach. That's how he fights. The second that you cut off the ring, the dude is getting hit everywhere. He's such a big person. You could go to the body. You could go to the head. There's so much just mass to be able to hit. Damian Knyba, his arms are too long to be fighting inside the pocket. He has not mastered that. He is too inexperienced to do that. And going up against a guy like Andy Ruiz Jr., who has the experience going into this fight advantage, I believe the second that Andy Ruiz Jr. cuts off the ring, puts the pressure just like AGIT KABAYEL, the fight's gonna end the same exact way. Andy Ruiz Jr. is a ferocious combination puncher. A ferocious combination puncher in the heavyweight division. Probably one of the most ferocious ones. When you're talking about just straight hooks for hooks, ladies and gentlemen. Andy Ruiz Jr., just like AGIT KABAYEL, disadvantaged when it came to the size and reach, but just like AGIT KABAYEL, when it came to experience and skills, they had the advantage. I believe Andy Ruiz Jr. is going to look fantastic against Damian Knyba on September 4th, live on TNT and Dazn. Ladies and gentlemen, the fight is going to be one of those type of cards in New York, New Jersey, which is going to be exciting as hell. The only thing that I will say about Damian Knyba and him having a chance in this fight is if Damian Knyba comes in with the right game plan, focused, trained hard, and for some reason Andy Ruiz Jr., having not been very active recently, you got to be hoping that the man doesn't come in looking like how he did. I would even say against Jarrell Big Baby Miller before he hurt his hand. He was looking good, bro. Great skills, great combination punching. But if Andy Ruiz comes in with rust, I think that's the only chance that Damian Knyba has, is to box from the outside and Andy Ruiz Jr. just not have his legs under him anymore. Just not have the ability to cut off the ring, to not have the ability to push Damian Knyba up in the ropes, catch him coming in, catch him going out. Damian Knyba is going to box in this fight. He's going to stay behind the jab. He's taller, he's longer, and he knows for goddamn hell he ain't going to be able to chunk it with Andy Ruiz Jr. So if Damian Knyba is able to get away with that, then he could give Andy Ruiz Jr. some problems. But it only took one round for AGIT KABAYEL to figure Damian Knyba out. It only took one round. By the second round, AGIT KABAYEL had him figured out. By the third round, out of there. I believe Andy Ruiz Jr. has seen enough, been through enough, experienced enough, been in bigger fights, and is at a moment in his career where he really needs to win this fight and look fantastic. I believe a great win over Damian Knyba, and just as great as AGIT KABAYEL, would really propel him back into the talks, ladies and gentlemen. But if this fight ends up being like a Chris Arreola fight or a Jarrell Big Baby Miller fight where you're expecting greatness and then, you know, it doesn't end up coming out, then if he can't beat a guy like Damian Knyba, I mean, Jarrell Big Baby Miller, don't get me wrong, he is a great fighter. So much to deal with. Luis Ortiz too. But if you can't do that to a guy like Damian Knyba, if you can't figure him out against a guy like Damian, and you don't figure it out on September 4th, it's going to be a real bad look, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you guys think. It's going to be an absolutely exciting one. I know Austin Ammo Williams is going to be fighting against Vito Malnicki Jr. at 160 pounds. You got some regional titles on the line, bro. That is going to be an absolutely goddamn fantastic stylistic war. It's going to be technical, but with hard punches flying. My goodness, I can't wait for it, man. September 4th. Mark your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. It's the return of the former unified heavyweight champion of the world in Andy Ruiz Jr. This is the MMA Boxing Addict channel bringing it to you. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like button. And don't forget to put in a comment. Y'all don't understand how far these likes and comments go in the algorithm when it comes to growing this channel. I'm not asking for anything else, man. Just a like, ladies and gentlemen. And a comment if you're down. If you support. But let me know what you guys think. I'm out.